You are listening to Standard Soapbox. Welcome to the first episode of Standard Soapbox, a podcast about politics and current events. I'm your host, Joseph. Our other host, Rob, was supposed to record this intro with me, but he is a lazy and is nowhere to be found. So I know that the sound quality is a little bad, but please forgive it. We're working with very minimum quality recording equipment. I promise you that once the show goes live, gets a following, and once we can afford to do so, we will upgrade to better equipment. So the format of the show is pretty simple. We have two, though technically three sections. The first, technically a section, is the one that we're doing right now, which is the intro. The second part of the show is the current events segment. In this segment, we talk about the recent happenings around the world, within the United States, within politics, even sometimes things that are non-political, but that are worth mentioning or noting or paying attention to. The third part of the show is the main topic. Now, the main topic is where we get into the nitty-gritty of a particular idea or a particular philosophy or a particular concept and try to go in-depth to have a discussion about it. So the schedule for the show will be that we will be posting the show every other week on Saturday. So this week is an exception because I'm posting this on the 23rd of July. But the next show will be on the 5th of August. And the show after that will be on the 19th of August. And so on and so forth. So with all those details and all the minutiae out of the way, I hope you can enjoy the podcast, and thank you for listening. See you on the other side. Next up, current events. How's it going?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Doing well. You excited to talk about the whole CNN blackmail thing?
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Where do you want me to start with that?
Well, let's start from the beginning. So basically, this whole thing started off with Trump tweeting a GIF of him in that was it WWE? Whatever. Yeah.
It was some sort of wrestling thing.
Yeah.
He was on there.
Yeah, because he was on there a while ago, and it was like him taking somebody down. And I don't know who the person was that he was taking down, but the GIF was with that person, but in place of their face, they had put CNN, like just CNN's logo. So he's like taking down CNN. So CNN just starts throwing a fucking fit, just screeching about we have our president encouraging violence against the media, which, I'll get your opinion on as to whether or not that's legitimate encouragement to violence.
I wouldn't say it's legitimate encouragement to violence. It's more, as anybody who knows Trump and has followed his time in office, anybody knows that he is against fake news, and anybody who is like myself, who is a Republican, considers himself to be right-leaning on the conservative post, knows that CNN lies about shit. If it's anything that has anything to do with the left, they glorify it. They make it sound better than what it really is. But these liberals out there that like to fact check things, they don't actually do that. They only seem to do it when it's anything involving any politician that goes out and says, oh, this isn't true and this is why. And it just goes into my whole beliefs personally that when they do stuff, it's not things that make sense. It's not things that actually further things. It's because it makes them feel good, which is not necessarily the way to run things and move the world forward. I'm sorry, but it's not, guys.
Yeah. Well, and it's like the whole thing with this CNN blackmail. CNN's like really unreliable. But basically they're not trustworthy. You have to fact check every single thing they put out because they will lie to you about, and usually through omission. They'll just exclude certain details or whatever, or they'll play something up. It's rare that they directly lie to your face, but they consistently lie by omission. They just flat out don't include things. There was that one time where they were interviewing the sister of some poor African American gentleman who was shot by a police officer, and there was rioting or whatever. And this sister of his was shouting about how like, oh, like, don't burn down our businesses, don't do all this. And so then they cut, right? And then immediately after the cut, she says, oh, no, take that to their neighborhoods, burn down their. So it's like they absolutely can and will cut and paste and edit and just lie by omission as much as possible. They're not a trustworthy news outlet. And honestly, at some point we'll have to cover this in greater detail, just the absolute fabrication that is anything by CNN. I think we have an episode slated for that. Spoiler alert or sneak peek, however you want to consider that. But
I would call it a sneak peek.
Yeah, sneak peek. But basically, they're not trustworthy. And what Trump is doing by posting this GIF is saying like, oh, I'm taking you down, right? Like in the GIF, he's taking somebody down, right? It's not like he's not kicking them in the face. He's not curb stomping them. He's not, he. It's like he's just taking somebody down, right? The person in the GIF gets up after. He lives. He's not dead, or at least not from Trump. I don't know who it was, so you never know. But
I think I know who it was. I'm not sure, but it could have been Vince McMahon.
See, that actually sounds right.
Anybody who knows wrestling knows that it is staged. It is sorry, wrestling fans, if any of you are out there listening, it is fake. Well, they know months in advance who's going to win what belt and what everything like that is. So guess what? It kind of fit. CNN fake news.
Yeah.
WWE fake wrestling.
Well, it's like honestly, like it's obviously fake. How on earth could Trump take anybody, down? Like I don't mean to impugn his fighting ability, but that's not what he was elected for, obviously. So
yeah.
So, but
he's not going to be any sort of pit fighting boss. I mean,
exactly.
If he's going to do his fighting, it's going to be on a political front. And
well, and that he is, and again, like I'm going to be very upfront about this. Obviously, I didn't vote for him, and I'm not like 100% in support of Trump, but he absolutely is killing it when it comes to his political maneuvering. Because CNN will this GIF that he tweeted was literally just like bait, and they like really latched onto that bait, right? Like it's dragging them through the mud right now. Because the way they reacted to it, they're like, "Oh, it's him encouraging violence," and there was that one stupid on CNN who was like, "Oh, well, I can't believe this. Our president's encouraging violence, and this is unacceptable in today's discourse." And it's like, okay, lady, calm down. He's not encouraging violence. He's doing no such thing. You can calm down. But so there was that, and that was already like, really stupid of CNN. Just the worst possible reaction they could have had. Or at least that's what I thought until, what they did next. Where basically they had their reporters from, I think it was K-File, looking into the person who originally made the GIF, right? Like the meme, And so, so what all do you know about that?
I just know that they came out and they threatened to dox this person once they find him, which is basically.
Well, no. They actually found out who he was, and they had like his identity. They had scrolled through his Twitter, or not Twitter, Reddit, and they had like found out through his posts what where he lived and found out stuff about him. They were able to locate this person, and then they sent him emails and phone calls, and they weren't able to get a hold of him with these emails or phone calls. And then a day later, I guess this guy messages back to them and says, yeah, please, I've taken down the meme, or I've taken down the GIF, I've taken down all my other offending stuff, and I promise not to do it again, blah, blah, like kind of conceding and caving in, which, I gotta, like, I don't really respect that move, but I understand why the person doesn't want their name dragged through the mud, because apparently this guy had also posted on, what's the subreddit that he was posting on, something about feeling bad for something. He was messaging on this Reddit forum, and it was all about like saying like awful
Mm-hmm.
And so basically, after he had taken down all the stuff, and like on the forum, he had said some like really racist stuff because like you're supposed to say something just the most awful thing you can think of, right? Or I think it's like I'm going to hell for this or something. I swear to God, when I figure out what the name of the subreddit is, I'm going to feel really stupid. But basically, he had taken down all of his offending content, and he was like, I'm so sorry about this. I'm not going to do it again. And I guess they did an interview with him and like asked him questions like, why did you do this and stuff like that. But then they released the news article about, the research that they had done, right? And I'll pull up the article here to quote it. So the headline for it is exclusive. CNN tracks down the Reddit user behind the Trump wrestling gif. Now he's apologizing, right? So you think like, okay, well they just got somebody to cuck, like they haven't done anything wrong yet. But then you read into the article, and initially it's the apology came after CNN's K-File identified the man behind Han Solo using identifying information that Han Solo posted on Reddit. K-File was able to determine key biographical details to find the man's name using a Facebook search, and ultimately corroborate details he had made available on Reddit. And then
to me that's just a major corporation abusing their power and fucking using it for wrong things.
And that's bad on its own, right? The fact they tracked this person down, like why do they need to, know that? Because like, and it would be one thing if they had just like found this information out and posted it, because they're still doxing somebody. But like, I think it gets worse here, and I'll read this whole. Let's see. After posting his apology, Han Solo called CNN's K-File and confirmed his identity. In the interview, Han Solo sounded nervous about his identity being revealed and asked not to be named out of fear for his personal safety and for the public embarrassment it would bring him and his family. Now, here's where it gets really bad. CNN is not publishing Han Solo's name because he is a private citizen who has issued an extensive statement of apology, showed his remorse by saying that he has taken down all of his offending posts, and because he is not going to repeat this ugly behavior on social media again. In addition, he said that his statement could serve as an example for others not to do the same. Sorry for me like butchering this. And then this is the line that like gets them into so much hot water. CNN reserves the right to publish his identity should any of that change. That is where this turns from doxing or threat, like, just the possibility of somebody doxing, because they haven't doxed him yet. But this is where it turns into blackmail, because you are saying that you reserve the right to publish this information, this dox. You reserve the right to do something that I think should be illegal already anyways, to somebody if they decide to disobey you. That is blackmail. Like, textbook definition of blackmail. And this is the most public, like, this is the thing that floors me. How did they think this was a good idea? Like, what editor or writer at CNN would think that they can openly blackmail somebody in an article and think that they're not going to get a ton of flack for this, And part of it makes me wonder if this is like common practice at CNN, and if that this is just like somebody not realizing that this is actually like an ethical problem and just going ahead with it because it's normal behavior and just posting it out to the world,
Yeah.
Like,
it's not right at any measure, because at that point you're like, oh, if this changes and you go out and say you're not going to do this and you do, we're going to basically take all your personal information and put it out there. That is what hackers do. That is what hackers do when they go and they have the means to say, okay, I'm going to go and do this, and I'm going to do this for the good of things. But let's put a little twist on this, sprinkle it with fairy dust, take this to the freaking company and say, look, we got into your this is how we did it, pay us, or we're going to turn around and we're going to post this public. We're going to take your customer's information and we're going to post it. While that may not be considered blackmail, it is along the same lines that CNN is doing this to this individual.
Yeah.
Because they did the legwork. They went and found this individual. They found his personal information. And then they said, you do what we want or we're going to do this.
Yeah, well, and like the kind of resources that CNN would have is obviously far and beyond, just as far as being able to dox him, because it's one thing for like some anonymous user to dox people or somebody, because their audience is kind of, generally a lot smaller, right? Like, unless you're like an online e-celeb or something, you've got a really small audience of people that are actually looking through the stuff you say, and so if you're posting something, it takes a while for it to go viral. But with this, they can instantly expose this man's identity to, like, I don't know, I would guess, like, upwards of millions.
Exposed, I'm going to go into millions because they're a major corporation. They've got their own freaking network to do the news. They got their own website, which I can almost guarantee you gets visited thousands of times a second. And if they put this on the front page, it's just going to blow up. Yeah.
Well, and like, just imagine, like, they post this guy's identity, and what happens to this guy? Oh, maybe his house gets bombed,
Yeah.
Like, this is
his house gets attacked. His house gets attacked. His family members start receiving death threats from freaking these Antifa that do what they do.
Yeah.
And that'll happen. You got crazy liberals like the dude who recently went to the freaking congressional baseball game and shot law people. Not okay.
I forgot about that.
Not okay. That is bullshit. That should not happen.
We should probably talk about that next.
I don't know if that Republican congressman is still going to be okay, but last I heard he was in critical condition or something.
Yeah, that's what I heard last too.
And then the fact that the who did it was on the payroll of Bernie Sanders.
Was he on the payroll? I think it was just in support of.
No, he was on Bernie Sanders' staff for his campaign.
I'll have to look that up. I'm not entirely sure about that. So, audience, first time I'm addressing you directly. If we're wrong about this, I will correct it in the show notes. So please look there. But that said, we'll continue.
Yeah, so, I'm pretty sure from what I've read and what I've heard, it was somebody that was on Bernie Sanders' campaign staff. Yeah.
Well, and regardless, like, I know that I'm trying to think. I remember hearing something about how this person, the people that he was following on Twitter, were like, these kind of like lefty journos too. And I think the person who made the CNN post was one of those people that he was following.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not entirely sure. So again, if I'm incorrect about this, I will post a correction in the show notes. Regardless, this is still like a problem, and it's apparent that if you post somebody's identity, that there's enough crazy people out there. And mind you, like, they're like a small number, right? Like, you think maybe 100. But all it takes is one crazy person to drive down to your house and gun you up for it to be a problem, You know what I'm saying? Like, there doesn't have to be, like, 1,000 crazy liberals who are going to go shoot somebody up or knife somebody or blow up their house or send them death threats or whatever. It takes, like, a few. And these few people can be pretty good about, like, making sure that any information they get on you, they're going to use that to harass you endlessly, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like posting that kind of information is immensely irresponsible. And again, like, what benefit does this have for the article? Like, what does this add to the conversation? What does posting this man's identity have anything to do with the fact that Trump tweeted out this GIF, right? Because this is the thing they were initially complaining about. Trump tweets out a GIF. Oh, like, I can't believe he's encouraging violence in the media. And so the question I have is, does this add anything to the story to post this man's identity? And this is the thing, the journalistic code of ethics, like, one of the key things, and mind you, I'm not like a journalist major, I'm not, I've not gone to school for this, but I know that, like, one of the things you're supposed to do as a journalist is to minimize the harm you do with your articles.
Mm-hmm.
And this is again, like, they haven't doxed him yet, but they're threatening to dox somebody. That's not keeping the harm of your actions to a minimum. And again, like, this is like literally blackmail. you know? I'm pretty sure that's illegal. And I remember it was one of the major Republicans that tweeted out something about how this violates certain statutes or something in New York. I could be wrong. Well, I know somebody tweeted something about this, but I could be wrong about the specific details here. But it's like, it just throws me for a loop that they think that they could get away with this, you know? And the fact that they thought this was a good idea just makes no sense to me.
All right, so the guy who did that shooting, I was actually looking it up.
Yeah?
Named James T. Hodgkinson. He's dead. They actually killed him at the whole event. But he was a staunch supporter of Bernie Sanders' progressive politics.
Yeah, I'm aware that he was a supporter, but my point was I don't think he was on the payroll.
Yeah, I read somewhere that he was involved with his campaign somewhere. He was a donator to it or something.
Yeah,
but to Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, but my point is he's not on the payroll of Bernie Sanders. He might be responsible for paying into the campaign funding or whatever, but it would be really concerning if it was somebody that Bernie Sanders was directly paid.
Here you go. Says Senator Sanders publicly acknowledged that Hodgkinson had volunteered for his presidential campaign last year, but he denounced the violence as despicable. So he volunteered to be as part of his campaign.
Oh, okay.
So he wanted to work for him.
Yeah.
But to me, that's close enough to say that he was involved with this campaign, and that's scary enough to me.
Well, and it is involved with this campaign. My point, I was very cautious about the on the payroll comment, because it was like, that we're going to get hung for that one if we don't make sure we've corrected it or whatever. But basically, my concern with him being part of Bernie Sanders' thing is that it's this kind of hyper leftist kind of, it's like left-wing terrorism, essentially, is the best way that I can think of to describe this kind of behavior. And I want to be very clear that Bernie Sanders is not advocating for this, right? Like, we've made it clear he's denouncing this, and rightfully so. And I'm not going to
denounced it.
Yeah, and I don't think Bernie Sanders directly has done anything to encourage this kind of behavior. I think it's other elements of the left that are doing this, particularly, again, like Antifa. Like, I think the news media, funny enough, is actually more responsible for this than even Bernie Sanders could possibly ever be, because the left-wing media is constantly spamming about Trump did this thing, Trump did that thing, and all the Republicans are evil, and anybody who could possibly complain about anything that the left proposes is obviously a Nazi, guys. And it's crazy, because it's encouraging violence like this, again, leads to somebody going up and shooting people. And I actually remember the day of this attack, I remember hearing a few people complain about how we should be restricting gun rights because of this. They were using this as an example. It's okay, but here's the thing. This was a leftist attacking people with a gun. And ideology was the primary motivating factor. This wasn't just some kid who was picked on or whatever, and he goes up and shoots a school or whatever.
Yeah, this was a full-grown adult. Probably, I don't know how old the dude was, but this was a full-grown adult who strictly identified himself with the left or a Democrat. And this is somebody who, mind you, most Democrats are anti-gun. They think we need more gun control, or make it very, very hard or almost impossible for citizens to exercise their Second Amendment right. And this individual exercised his Second Amendment right, and he decided to use his Second Amendment right to do harm.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then this is the point with the Second Amendment, is that it's it's a freedom that you have, but you're not free from the consequences of going up and shooting up anything, right? And
while America is free, it's not free to the point where, I'm going to get a gun, I'm going to use this gun to go do crimes. It's not that. I mean, yes, it's great you have a gun. I would recommend everybody use their Second Amendment rights, because I am a big Second Amendment rights guy.
As am I.
But am I going to support you when you go out and you do something stupid that is against the law? No, I am not. Even if you are a Republican and you do it, or you are Democrat, left or right, you do something stupid with a gun, I hope they catch you. And I hope to God they throw your ass in jail and throw the book at you is so hard that you can't even think straight.
Yeah.
Why? Because your actions provoked that.
Well, and again, obviously, nobody on the right at all is ever advocating for like mass shootings, right? They just want to be able to exercise their Second Amendment right. And it's like, I can understand like advocating for like a little bit of gun control or whatever, because you know you don't want people taking, for example, like firearms into schools, right? That's a little dangerous. Though admittedly there's an argument in favor.
Although there, depending on what state you live in, there are no laws prohibiting you from doing so. You can take a concealed weapon into a school and be fine, as long as they don't have signs posted at all the entrances saying that
you can't take in a firearm.
If they have them posted, you have to comply with that, because it's considered a private residence or a private business at that point. And you, as a concealed carrying citizen, have to abide by that. The reason why I know this is because I have taken a concealed carry class. In fact, the beginning of this week on Monday, I actually received my concealed carry permit. So
congratulations.
That should tell you right there that I know those laws and I 100% abide by them. If I can abide by them, everybody should need to, no matter what is wrong. The only thing that would compel somebody to want to lash out with a firearm against either an elected official or anybody, like a normal everyday citizen, you've got to be off mentally in your head to want to do that. The only reason that you would even want to pull a weapon on a human being is if they are attacking you personally with a weapon or making threats. But the fact that somebody just makes a threat towards you does not give you the right to pull a weapon and use it in self-defense. Now, if they pull a weapon like, say, a knife or another gun at you, you were 100% justified to pull your weapon and defend yourself. Now, are you still going to have are you going to have no legal recourse for doing that? No. The reason why being is if you fire a weapon, like, I'm not going to say what city I live in or what state I live in, because there's a lot of crazy out there.
CNN.
Let's just put it this way. In my particular city, is a Class A felony to discharge a weapon in city limits. So what that'll mean is even if you are 100% justified to pull your weapon and you do have to defend yourself or your loved one's family, whatever, you will still be arrested. You will still be investigated as if you were the criminal. And it's basically the same thing as paid administrative leave. If you've ever heard of a cop shooting and they go, the officer involved is on paid administrative leave. Basically what paid administrative leave is, they're sitting in a jail cell while it's being investigated.
Yeah. Well, and this is the big thing with gun control is that, again, like, we already have a lot of laws about what you can and can't do with guns. Like, I'm generally speaking not in favor of increasing that amount of control, but I'm willing to talk about it. But it's like to use, and again, in this particular case with the man shooting at the Republican, was it senators, congressmen?
There were senators and congressmen because it was a congressional baseball game.
Yeah,
which they
wasn't it softball?
It was softball or baseball, whichever.
Yeah, I don't.
But they do it yearly. It's a tradition that they do in Washington, D.C. But, I never even knew they did that until this happened. So this individual must have known this was coming and knew about it firsthand. Yeah. So there had to have been some planning going into it for him to do what he did. Yeah. And to me, the dude's either got mental issues or he's got mental issues. That's the only thing that can come down to it.
Well, either he's got mental issues, which, again, like, is its own branch of, like, questions and concerns and whatever, or it's ideologically motivated, right? Because the thing is, again, you have the news media pushing and saying, like, oh, well, like, Trump's this, like, evil person and he's going to destroy America and all the Republicans are neo-Nazis. And it's like, when you start shouting about that kind of, that kind of crap, right? You're creating these, like, narratives of, like, how anybody who's right-leaning is automatically a Nazi. And and your country is at least half these Nazis, right? This is a huge problem that you need to go fix. And how do you fix a problem of this scale? Usually by the point of a gun. And so these people go out, they get a gun, they go and shoot people. And it's like, okay, well, whose fault is this? Maybe a little bit the media's. I'm not saying that they're the ones who pulled the trigger, but they encouraged the person who did pull the trigger. And this could also be a combination of the two, because obviously the person could have had mental issues and then also, been like ideologically driven or whatever. And, that said, it's kind of hard to interrogate somebody because didn't they like shoot the shooter?
Oh yeah, they shot and killed
Yeah,
him.
so
He
so
died.
it's kind of hard to interrogate him for his motives when he's dead. So,
I mean, even then, I support them using lethal force on this individual.
Oh,
because
absolutely.
They were attacking elected officials, whether they're Democrat or Republican. Those are elected officials.
Yeah.
No threat should be made towards them or acted upon. And I honestly believe that whether you're a celebrity, whether you're a normal citizen, whether you're even a foreign citizen, you do any threat towards any elected official, whether it be a congressman, senator, congresswoman, president, vice president, whatever, you need to face the consequences for that.
Yeah. Like, for example, if you sit and talk about, maybe thinking about bombing the White House, and maybe you're talking about this like in a big, women's march or whatever, like maybe that's a little bit of a problem, and maybe maybe some.
If one of my friends started spouting off craziness, whether they were drunk or not, if they started spouting off craziness, saying that they were plotting to overthrow a government, or they were plotting to go out and bomb some building,
you would absolutely.
I would report that. You bet.
Yeah.
I would. Why? Because I don't want to be involved in that for one.
Yeah, well, and involved in it by just not saying anything, because that actually is still involvement,
Yeah, because the fact that somebody said it and then I said nothing and then they went and did it,
yeah,
I could have put a stop to that. And if they knew that, they had talked to me about it and I did nothing, guess what? I get accomplice charges for that.
Yeah. Well, and again, like, this is the thing with the left is that, and again, like, I want to make it very clear that I consider myself more on the left than on the right, right? Like, this is kind of where we differ a little bit. But it's kind of weird how many things we agree on, despite having this apparent critical difference.
The thing that's interesting, audience, before we started doing this whole podcast thing, this has been in the works for a month, maybe two.
It's more than a month or two. It's been in. I think I messaged you about it like January, February.
Yeah, so probably like 6 months now.
Yeah,
going on 7. But we did the political compass test, which when he uploads this, I'm pretty sure he's going to put links to those so that you can go and do those tests and find out where you politically stand.
Next up, main topic. I think the most hilarious thing with the whole politically correct stuff is that was literally like a term invented to describe your behavior because you were doing what the communists were doing.
Yeah.
Which was saying something's politically correct, even though in reality it's not.
You were just
correct.
Following the herd is basically what you were doing.
Yeah. Well, and literally if you take politically correct, that's like it. There's a reason that you have to add the politically there. It's because it's not just normal correct, right? If it was correct, it would just be correct, right? It's the actual correct thing.
Right.
Saying politically correct emphasizes the fact that this is only correct in a political context, and really even not just a political context, but in context to the groupthink, right? So yeah, but basically, but the Bill Nye thing, and again, to wrap this right back around to where I started with this, Bill Nye saying that we should round up people and throw people in jail for disagreeing with climate change. That's where I draw the line.
That's bull. And it's like, dude, that's basically what the Nazis did in Germany. You're not my superior race, so I'm going to round you up and put you in jail or a concentration camp because your views don't match mine. Yeah.
Well, it's like it's the worst kind of authoritarian, and so bear in mind, like, while I like Bill Nye, my concern when it comes to global warming, because if you look through the scientific data, it's like, if you have an understanding of how to actually like read through scientific papers, it will become immediately obvious that global warming's happening, right? And
it's happening. It's happening, and there's proof for it because, I mean, right now I've got a sunburn on my face. I mean,
well, no, but
the
like
last few years, especially where I live, I mean, it's gotten easier for me to get sunburned, even if I have like 100 plus SPF.
well, no,
Sunscreen.
but that's like a bit anecdotal. I think the bigger picture to
And
point to.
it's also apparent because where I live, we the last couple summers we've been rated by the EPA to have the worst freaking air quality in the nation, including
Yeah.
other cities who have a higher population than where I live. And for a city that has a smaller population than, say, Los Angeles or Mexico City or, Phoenix or Boston, Massachusetts area, and they're saying that we have the worst air quality, yeah, something's going on there.
Yeah. Well, but like, and I think the biggest thing to know with the global warming stuff is that it's, again, like, if you look through the scientific papers, there's no evidence really against it, and the handful of like genuine skeptics of it are skeptics of it in like different ways than climate skeptics traditionally means. Like, they're skeptical about like how much climate change is there, and is this data being interpreted correctly, right? And it's genuine like skepticism, which I appreciate to see in scientific literature, right? Like, I despise groupthink, so anytime somebody's questioning something and they're questioning it in the right way, right? The genuinely inquisitive, wanting to know the truth kind of way, it's like, yeah, no, that I can get behind. It's the taking scientific papers and then misinterpreting it and then creating an article which then people then continue to misinterpret, and it cycles on and on. It's like,
yeah.
And this brings me to a bit of a point. Like, when it comes to liberals, there's a lot of things when they like open their mouths about something. It's like, okay, you people have lost the debate on this and need to shut up. Guns and gun rights are like the prime thing, right? There's no problem with owning guns. You have lost the discussion here. You should just.
The fact that you're bringing this up reminds me of the dude in, I think it was Chicago, and the freaking journalist. But we'll go into that once you're done.
Yeah, no, but it's like this. Like, liberals just need to like forget about gun control. Like, they've lost the plot. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't know enough about guns to be able to actually talk about what common sense regulation is, right? And there's actually a really good piece.
Liberals. You don't call a magazine a clip. It is a magazine.
Exactly.
And you don't call a cartridge where the bullet is stuffed in the front behind the powder charge. You don't call a cartridge a bullet. It's a cartridge. It's a self-contained one.
Yeah.
That's what it is. The bullet is what comes out of the barrel and hits things, like in
people,
your opinion, since guns kill people.
Well, yeah, well, no, but basically, like, this is what liberals need to stop hammering, or like, quote-unquote liberals, because I think, like, a genuine classical liberal is actually more in favor of gun rights. Because when I say classical liberal, I'm referring to, like, Locke, right? Like, I'm referring to the kind of classical liberal tradition based off of Enlightenment values, based off of, like, even, like, looking to, like, the American Revolution, there was a lot of, like, liberalism in the American Revolution. Right, that philosophy was the basis for our revolting against England, because we viewed them as being tyrannical. So it's like, I think a genuine liberal understands that, yeah, gun rights are important. If you think that gun rights aren't, either you're not a liberal or you're not informed enough. And this is precisely the thing. If you're not informed enough, get informed or don't talk, right?
Exactly.
And then I pivot around. Conservatives, please, don't talk about global warming. This is not your strong suit. Like, a lot of conservatives don't understand the scientific literature enough to actually be able to explain, even just critique of global warming as like a theory, right? Like, they'll say, oh, it's just a theory. It's like, okay, well, by saying that, they'll demonstrate.
It's definitely not a theory.
Well, no, here's the thing. It is a theory by scientific definition. But that said, this is, again, like, where conservatives tend to get things wrong, right? Because they just don't understand the scientific literature enough to really break it down. You get what I'm saying?
Which
And
is one of the main reasons why you really don't talk about it. I know it's there. I
yeah,
know it's a issue, but I don't know
enough
enough
about it.
about it to
Yeah.
really validate an argument.
Well, but even then, like that, despite that, and this is the area where the conservatives can be really strong. Hammer at the aspect of global warming when it comes to regulation, right? Because you can be anti-regulation and have that be a principle you hold and fight against global warming advocates or whatever you want to call them who want to increase regulation to fix global warming. It's like, okay, you can have an argument about that. But when it comes to proving whether global warming is real or not, that the discussion's done. Like, it's happening.
Then at the same time, those advocates that are like, "Oh, we need more regulation," they're
Yeah.
also the first ones to complain when things that they typically like to do daily
Get regulated.
infringed upon because of the regulation that they wanted in the first place.
Exactly. Like, oh, like I have to like go and get my car tested or whatever. It's like, yeah, you kind of asked for this. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, you can have these regulations, but then you have to deal with the regulations, and they don't seem to actually like the consequences of their actions.
Yeah.
You know?
It's like my liberties are being infringed on because I can't do this. And I'd be like, wait a minute. Let's go back a step. You were the groups that complained until this regulation happened.
Yeah.
Now you're telling us that it's affecting your way of life, so you don't want it anymore?
Yeah. Well, and it's like, honestly, when it comes to global warming, this again, like this will be future episode, and this might have to be our slogan, like stay tuned. But basically, my opinion on what we should do for global warming is we should just get rid of cars and roads, and
I'd be okay with that. I got a nice little pair of Chevrolet legs right here. So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it's like here's the thing, like, and I'm not going to get all the way into it, but you could build a city where you don't need cars. That's like I say this to people, and usually their reaction's like, I can't believe you're so stupid, you're so crazy, you have all these ridiculous ideas, Joseph. And I'm sitting here thinking, okay, here's the thing.
Here's how I see it. You're thinking outside of the box, okay?
Exactly. That's what I try to tell them, and then they tell me I'm crazy, and I don't, you know?
No. Here's my opinion. If you're not thinking outside of the box, you're part of the problem.
Exactly. Well, and it's like, this is, again, like why we have gridlock in Congress. This is why, because people are thinking inside of the box. It's like, you need to think of a solution that really breaks the paradigm. And again, like when we actually like go in depth on this, because I'm trying to remember what I labeled this as, but I actually have like a very specific topic that I want to address in the future. So something a little bit about automation. In that, we will discuss the actual, like, my argument for getting rid of cars, and it's really thorough and increasingly thorough as I do research, because then I'm coming up with like numbers and figures and stuff like that. So let me tell you, like I have an argument to back this up. So I just wanted to note that, because I'm going to get a bunch of comments being like, he's crazy, doesn't know what he's talking about. How could you get rid of roads? It's like, well, very, very easy argument, actually. It's not that hard.
I don't know. Why don't we go ask the Amish people? They've been getting along just fine without cars and roads.
Well, but you'll bring up the Amish, and people will be like, oh, well, but they don't have cell phones. Like, okay, but those aren't necessarily,
Hey, guess what? We didn't have cell phones either up until, like, maybe the last 15 or
so
years.
But even then, getting rid of cars isn't...
I got along fine without a cell phone.
No, but again, here's the thing. You can still have that cell phone and not have cars. Like, you could just rework transportation in such a way that you don't have cars. Like, it's perfectly doable. We just aren't thinking outside of the box. We're not being creative enough or elegant enough. It's kind of like, I think the best description that I can think of to describe this is with coding, right? Because I've dabbled in C++ from time to time. One of the biggest things that they emphasize in coding is elegance in design, right? Using as few lines of code as you can to accomplish your problem, right? Or to accomplish what you're trying to do, to solve a problem, right? So you've got a program that's maybe what you want to do is you want to flash up, a line of text like, "Hi, Rob," like 10 times, right? Well, you could just have it be like print line hi Rob, and you could just copy and paste that 10 times in your program. Or you could do a for loop, right? And this is precisely the thing, is that it's like, what I'm doing here is saying, hey, let's use a for loop instead of copy and pasting hi Rob, print line hi Rob 10 times, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just the more elegant solution. It's wasting less space, or in this case, with in regards to solving global warming, again, like, you're not burning fuels, which isn't contributing to pollution, and it's also not contributing to carbon emissions. We'll also get into discussion about how that saves on our economy and how it reduces the amount of fuel that we're expending, which means that we can just be more efficient with our energy.
You know, when it comes to a political compass or things like that, everybody's going to have their own thoughts. Everybody's going to have their own differences. Like, I've known Joseph here for quite a few years, and never once am I going to be like, oh, you're a liberal snowflake piece of
Yeah.
I'm never once going to call anybody that. I will agree with you to disagree. And I will tell you right now, I respect anybody out there, but if you come at me one-sided with disrespect, I'm going to give you that disrespect 10 times back.
Yeah. Well, and this is why, like, I'll even, like, call people, like, liberal snowflake if they're, you know, being the exact kind of vitriolic, you know, crap that I, again, immensely disagree with. But even then, like, I tend to refrain from calling them liberals because, as far as I'm concerned, those groups represent, you know, like, the kind of leftists that will call people Nazis, that will harass and dox people, that will watch CNN, are different from true actual liberals, as neo-Nazis are different from conservatives. Now, obviously, the bad kind of leftist is very much in agreement with, or thinks that they're both the same on both fronts, right? They'll lump in all the conservatives and all the neo-Nazis, and it's like, I hate to break it to you guys, the conservatives are nowhere near neo-Nazis. Like, a lot of conservatives, like, the biggest thing that I would disagree with the conservative on is the thing with gay marriage, and it's like, okay, but first off, they're not wanting to kill people for being gay, right? That's not even on the table with that. Whereas if you look in the Middle East, you'll get that. I think the worst you have is, like, go ahead.
I'm going to chime in on that. When it comes to the LGBTQ, whatever you call it nowadays, they're always adding an extra letter to it. It seems like
it's literally an alphabet soup, or alphabet.
Yes, it just gets bigger. You've probably figured out by now that even though my political compass says that I am left-leaning, in fact, it put me down in the annals of where Bernie Sanders is at. I call it bullshit because I have my own thoughts and my own ideals. I identify myself personally as a right-leaning conservative. Yeah. And I get that from my family because about 95% of us are Republican. I've actually been disowned by one of my cousins who is very left-leaning Democrat because I myself did vote for Donald Trump. Do I agree with all of his ideals? Do I agree with everything that he wants to do? No, I don't. But there are things that I 100% agree with him on. Do I think that all illegals need to be deported? No. Do I think that they need to either have work visas or need to think about becoming American citizens to stay here? You bet your I do. Yeah. Why? Because if I was to go down somewhere, say like Mexico or even further south to South America, and my visa ran out while I was there or my passport ran out, guess what? I'm there illegally. I will go to federal prison for that.
Yeah. Well, and it's like my thing with immigration is, like, I just don't understand why people on the left don't want, you know, these illegal immigrants to become citizens. And obviously there's some of them that do want them to become citizens and are pushing to make that process easier. And those are the people I'm willing to have a discussion with, and we can really iron that out. But there are people on the left who say, oh, well, they should be allowed to be here illegally. We should open up our borders and just let whoever wants to come over, even if they're not a citizen. It's like, that's where you lose me, because the thing with citizenship. Go ahead.
I understand their point where they're coming from, where they want to open up their borders and they want to make it like, oh,
Yeah.
we're all humans, you know.
Mm-hmm.
What they're not seeing, and I am going to use Europe as a example.
They're an example and all examples.
Specifically Great Britain. What happened there recently? There were 2 terrorist attacks. One of them during an Ariana Grande concert where people were fucking slaughtered by militant Muslim extremist terrorists. Why were they there? Because there is left-leaning people in that country that is very far left-leaning that thought it was okay to make it fine to open their borders and let people in there without, you know, proper documentation. And these people have been there for
years.
Who knows how long?
Yeah, no, they've been there for years. It's like they're like second. A lot of these terrorists that you'll find, they're second generation in Britain. And the reason for a lot of these problems is because people come through just, you know, on their own and with like open borders, right? They'll just come through. And naturally, they like every other human wants to be with people that look like them. That's just kind of like a standard bias that humans have. And I mean, so they will kind of naturally cluster in certain areas, especially since, like, for example, if my brother is living somewhere and I'm moving to this fresh new country and he's living somewhere, I'm probably going to go move in with him. And so, and if a bunch of us are moving, obviously there's going to be some congregations, some big groups. You're going to have these cloisters where it's like highly Muslim communities, and they're going to, again, like it's going to become a very insular community. They're going to feel very isolated. The youth of these communities are then going to turn to, you know, extremism and stuff like that, because that'll make them feel welcome, and that will result in them suicide bombing a concert. Like, this is the thing. Like, we don't want to allow open borders because it causes problems, and what you want with immigration is slow, steady immigration, because then the people coming over aren't overwhelming our infrastructure. You have, and the people coming over can, you know, become properly acquainted, and they can really integrate into the society, right? We don't want them forming cloisters. We want them integrating, especially in America, because we're a melting pot, right? We're not a mosaic. We're not, like, the idea is that you come here and you're an American first, and then everything else is second. And so, and again, like, I'm sure a lot of people be like, see, I knew he was conservative, and it's like, no, I consider myself a liberal, and we'll get down to at some point the kind of the differences in between my views and conservative values or views, but I will say this is a very key important thing when it comes to immigration, and this is an area where I lean with the conservatives a little bit. Because I'm saying, like, look, we shouldn't have open borders. But yes, I'm for a fair, easy immigration process. I don't think that people should have to jump through 100 bajillion hoops. I think if they really desperately want to come here, they should be allowed to. As long as they come here and they become citizens. And my thing is, I just want them to pay taxes on the income that they earn like everybody else. And I want them to be afforded the protections of a citizen, right? Like, I want to make sure that when they come here, that some corporation is not going to exploit them, because this happens, where you'll have these, like, illegal immigrants who are here and they're employed by an employer, but the employer knows they're illegal and will pay them an extremely low wage and will treat them poorly because they know that they can get away with it. And it's like, this is a problem. We can't allow this. This is why I'm for making sure that our border is secure and making sure that we either deport illegal immigrants or make them citizens.
I mean, even if they come here and they don't want to be a citizen, that's fine.
Yeah, but that's what work visas are for.
Yes, well, there should also be a cap on the work visa. You should be able to say, look, I'm going to give you this work visa. It's good for so many years. And while you were there, you will have what we call an I-10, which is basically like a temporary social security number, which is used by the IRS to identify them, and they will pay taxes on their money. Yeah. And that is exactly what a work visa does. Now, where I think we need to cut the line off when it comes to work visas, only renew it one time.
Yeah.
Don't keep renewing it and renewing it and renewing it and renewing it. All that's doing is you're taking an open wound and you're putting a Band-Aid on it. Eventually, that Band-Aid is going to stop working. You're going to be getting infections. It's going to fester, and it's going to get worse.
Yeah.
And eventually, you're going to end up losing limbs or whatever that thing was supposed to do. It's a system that has long needed to be overdone and reworked. But whenever you bring up illegal immigration, people get pissed. I understand that you don't want to become a United States citizen. That's fine. Go back to where you came from. I'm saying that as nice as possible here. You're coming here, you're doing it illegally, you're taking your money, you're sending it back to your families. That's fine. You're taking care of your family. I support that 100%. But what I don't agree with is when you come here and you're doing things illegally. It's like, if I do things illegally, guess what? I'm going to get charged for it. You should be charged for that as well. But
yeah, like
oh, no, we'll just deport them. What's to stop them from coming back again?
Yeah.
I know families and I know people that have done that, and they're proud to say, oh, well, my family got started because somebody jumped the border. And, they work hard. Okay, well, they work hard. Do they pay taxes on that money they work hard for? No. That's what pisses me off.
Yeah.
How can they skirt the law when I have to pay taxes on every single freaking penny that I go to work for and I bust my for on a daily basis, but yet they don't do the same?
Well, and that issue is compounded. Like during the election, Obama was encouraging illegals to go and vote, because there was somebody who tweeted, or I don't know if it was tweeted at him, but it was like they were like, "Oh, I'm worried about coming and voting because I'm not here legally, and I'm concerned that I will be deported." And Obama's like, "Oh no, you'll be fine. They don't check that stuff." And it's like, okay, well, this is direct incitement to go and vote illegally. This is precisely the thing that like a lot of Republicans, will screech about endlessly, right, with voter fraud. And it's like, I will screech with them, because if this is occurring, even if it's a few people, this is a problem, right? And this is what annoys.
If a few people do it, eventually word's going to get around. Oh, I did it, and it's easy. This is how I did it, and then they're going to tell other people.
Yeah. Well, and when you have the president, when you have the president directly telling them that they can do this and that they're not going to get in trouble, it's like this is a problem. And so, but like my thing is that again, like and when it comes to like voter registration, I'm sure we'll talk about photo ID at some point, and that'll be a huge thing. But let's just say, for the record, I am in agreement with photo ID, but I do think that there are certain concerns that need to be talked about with it. But that said, like when it comes to immigration, like I don't want them voting illegally. I don't want that. I want to make sure that they're paying taxes on the income that they earn. But as long as they're not causing us problems, then I think that they're fine for now, as long as either they become citizens or as long as eventually they go back to their own country and work there and contribute to their economy, right? Because this is the thing, like Mexico's not going to get better if all of its like hardworking people come up here to work,
Exactly.
Like they need to kickstart their economy. And I'm aware that the other aspect of the problem with Mexico is the drug war, which that's a huge thing that we can talk about at some point too, because I think that the drug war is something that was like caused by things that could have been avoided and then has been exacerbated by our responses and stuff like that. But that at the same time, I do feel that the Mexican government is somewhat culpable for having allowed this to fester and become such a huge problem in their country, right? Like if we had, U.S. citizens running down to Mexico to get jobs because we had cartels up here running the economy or whatever, it's like, I have a feeling the Mexican government wouldn't be too happy about that, and rightfully so. I think they would be rightfully irritated. So I think I get especially annoyed when people talk about Mexico as being this great country, and it's like, no, the country itself is run by just the worst people ever. Their president, or I guess he's ex-president now, the one who's like doing all the videos where he's addressing Trump. Have you seen any of those?
I don't think so. Probably missed him.
It's the most condescending, and he's like sitting there telling like Trump like how dumb he is and blah blah blah, and it's like.
Oh, like, are you talking about the old president of Mexico?
Yeah, that guy.
Fox, and he's like, oh yeah, I saw one of them. And I
Yeah.
was like, dude, you're not innocent either, because from what I understand, you started to make headway with fixing your economy, and then you took the money and ran away like a scared little
Yeah,
from
well,
what I understand.
like my thing is, like, I can't stand the fact that this guy, of all people, is the guy the left's bringing out to, like, say, ha, we're going to stick it to Trump with this whole Mexico thing. It's like, this guy's the problem. This guy, honestly, if anybody, should be the one you guys are pinning this on. You know? Because if this guy hadn't pulled the stuff that he did, and if his government hadn't behaved the way that it did, then we might not even have this immigration problem to begin with. Like, this is caused by him. We can talk about how bad we feel for the immigrants or whatever, and it's like, that's a very, again, like we just had that discussion. But this guy caused the problem to begin with. He hurt the poor Mexicans that you're complaining about, and then he's also hurting hardworking Americans, and he's also hurting a whole bunch of other people, and it's this whole cascading effect. This guy, honestly, if anybody should be held accountable for this, it's him. I would love to see him bankrupt over this. Thank you for listening to Standard Soapbox. We can be reached on Twitter. My Twitter handle is @Vingar, Vinghar. Rob can be reached on Twitter @Snakes200, SNAKES200. Thank you for listening once again, and have a wonderful day.